You're listening to the Career Jump podcast. Insights, interviews, and success stories to inspire and give you the edge when you make your next career jump. Hosted by your career concierge, Andrew McCaskill.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Executive Career Jump podcast. I'm your host and career concierge today, Andrew McCaskill, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Vicky Constable. So, as part of season 2 in the Executive Career Jump podcast, we're really keen to get leaders who've successfully been through a job search process and managed to achieve a transition to come and talk to us, as well as all the good career coaches and HR leaders we work with. So I'm really grateful, Vicky, that you've come on to join us. I know this is your first podcast as well, so thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Andrew.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you again. So just give us a little bit of background, if you can, in terms of your career and you're about, just to help frame the conversation. That'd be great.
My career has been based in retail, so I'm very much sort of retail through and through. And I've been working in retail head offices now, probably for far too long, for probably nearly 25 years, in fact. My background's merchandising. For the last sort of 15 years or so of my career, I moved over to the more international side of retail and franchising and wholesaling. So during that time, I've been with some fantastic brands. Generally, my career has been predominantly in ladies wear. Obviously, I've helped scale those brands over the time. The main part of my career, I've spent 15 years at the same brand, and I've had the dubious honour of, in the last year and a half, of actually I'm now in my third role in a year and a half after spending 15 years at the same brand. So obviously, hopefully, I'll be able to provide some of the tips and techniques that have helped me during those 3 periods of transition.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about that journey then. That is interesting, isn't it? Having 15 years in one place and then finding yourself on the market a few times in succession. Tell us a bit more about how that came about and a bit more about your story there.
Yes, so my first time in the market was back in autumn 2019. The brand I was working with, unfortunately, became part of one of the many casualties of the retail sector and was brought by an online retailer. And consequently, as I looked after the franchise and wholesale division, my area of the business wasn't one of the areas that transferred over to the new owners. I was actually really, really lucky that I was part of the team that was handling the administration and working with the administrators, helping wind down the business. I found that actually a really valuable experience because it gave me a bit of headspace and a bit of time, to get all my ducks in row, because I've been in the same role for 15 years. When had I lost on a CV? Not very recently. So my big piece of advice for anyone who is currently in role, and you'll do this naturally when you have your sort of annual or semi-annual reviews, is make a note of your achievements, make a regular note of what you've accomplished, because it's quite difficult 15 years on to look back and think, what have I actually achieved during that time? And then you've got to try and put pen to paper. We were lucky in a way that lots of us were going through, the whole team was obviously going through that experience at the same time. So we were sort of sharing techniques. We could share CV formats and what was working for one. And we were obviously helping review and, consolidate everyone's experience. So that was really, really helpful. You didn't feel like you were on your own. Where obviously I realized there's lots of people going through this process now that maybe because of the current times, they're not able to sort of be with their colleagues and friends and obviously, share that experience.
Yeah, no, it definitely does help, that sense of going through it with other people. Some people get job search buddies and things like that, which I really do believe in. So yeah, great. And so we work with quite a lot of people, and you and I collaborate with quite a lot of people who've been at an organization for a long time and then leave. What kind of thought processes were you going through around trying to work out what you wanted to do next? Because it's very difficult when you've been at somewhere for over a decade, isn't it? To, one, translate what your skill set, but two, also try and make sense of what you might want to do next. So tell me a bit about your thought process at the time.
Yeah, I was lucky. I had that 3 months of working for the administrator. So I was very much like, do I just jump straight in? Do I try and do something new? And my background was merchandising. So I sort of thought, well, maybe I could fall back into that. But obviously the market, although not as tough as the market is currently, the market still wasn't necessarily fantastic, and there weren't lots and lots of opportunities at that point in time. So I really had to sort of think, is this what I want to do? And I think often you find it's difficult not to be defined by your job, but I was very much like Vicky, working head office. I've always worked for nice brands. So when you meet people, they'll always be quite interested in what you do. It probably sounds much more exciting and glamorous than it actually is. But, it's ladies wear, it's fashion. I used to travel. So to the outside person, it feels, that was exciting. That was me. That was obviously part of who I was. And suddenly, okay, that's not going to be part of me anymore. And what am I going to do? Obviously, you're defined by the market and the number of opportunities in the market. So during that time, I had approximately four interviews. I think 2 of them were appropriate and at the right level, and 2 of them weren't at the right level. Interestingly, the opportunity I secured was my line manager actually just sent me an invite on LinkedIn. So I'll recommend to anybody, any invites you get on LinkedIn, obviously, check how many contacts the person's got, but just accept them. Because I did think, okay, that person's there. Why do they want to link in with me? And then obviously conversations later, they'd actually moved from that role, and they were looking to hire. So obviously, if I hadn't accepted that invite, then that opportunity wouldn't have come along.
That's a tremendous point, actually, because conceptually, some people think of LinkedIn as a black book. So they just kind of tend to connect and accept connections from people that they know. But it's an ecosystem that's full of opportunity, as you and I know, and that proves that point. So thanks for that. And I also just want to hammer home the other really good tip and valuable insight you gave, which was this piece around, continuing to update your CV document whilst you're in post and throughout your career, because the amount of people I'm trying to help start from scratch, Vicky, and it is a nightmare trying to remember data and figures and dates and all of that kind of thing. So already some fantastic insights there. Thank you. Some people, when they leave organizations, talk about whether it's redundancy or what it might be, talk about the kind of the change process. And you touched on some of that around, it was part of your identity. And there is like a grieving process effectively that goes with that. It sounds like you had a bit of time to internalize it because of, working with the administrators and things. But how did you go around the mental side of the change and the job search process?
Yeah, I guess I'm lucky because I meditate, although ironically, when I don't work, I only meditate once a day. So I think that helped. And I sort of started journalizing. And to be honest, it might sound ridiculous, probably less so my first period of job searching as the latter 2. I really thought I was going to get something, which might sound absolutely ludicrous, because both of the latter times was during, obviously, the current pandemic. But I just honestly believed I was going to get a role. My other half was I think he was a bit, okay, you obviously see the stats and what's happening, in the retail environment. But I really believed I was going to get a role. And I think that helps. And then I did read some books all about habits and about visualization, and how lots of top athletes, they'll visualize, winning the race, even if things go wrong. So I think it might sound absolutely ridiculous, but I do think meditating, having that space just to sort of take yourself away and just visualizing, believing it's going to happen. You will have setbacks. You will apply for roles and maybe not hear back. But I think it's just really believing that it will happen. And I think that maybe helped.
Yeah, no, absolutely it helps. Visualization is just super powerful, isn't it? But one thing we've been trying to get people to do before interviews is to imagine that they're going to really like the person that they're going to meet. To imagine that the conversation is going to go well. Because then naturally you show up with an energy and the other person can feel it, right? They can feel that you've got that good energy. It's very hard not to like someone who clearly likes you. And so it's super underrated, isn't it? The visualization piece. So it doesn't sound silly or lightweight at all. I think it's a great tip. So yeah, I've got to ask you why I've got you on there. So meditation, right? So again, I'm one of the dabblers who's had a go, struggled with it, if to be honest, and I've had periods where I've managed to maintain the habit and periods where I haven't. Talk to me a little bit more about what you've gained from meditation that you've done and how it's helped you, and how I'm really interested as well personally to find out how you've managed to make it a habit that's stuck.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably about sort of 4 years ago now. I did a course on Vedic meditation with Will Williams, and that was actually a course over a weekend, I think. And I did it ironically because I was doing mindfulness. And mindfulness, you had to carve out 10 minutes a day, and I felt I wasn't carving that out. So I actually did this meditation course, and this actually involves 20 minutes twice a day. So, and the idea is also you're only supposed to meditate 2 hours at least after you've eaten, because the digestive process will affect things. So I went and did this course, and then I think it's just making that headspace. So normally I'd meditate to and from work on the tube, because you were given a mantra, and it doesn't matter if it's noisy. Where I did the course, the windows were open. It was summer. It was in central London. You could hear people, in the streets and things. So the idea is it doesn't have to be somewhere quiet, which I think often people think of you needing that quiet space just to reflect. And so now I meditate before I get up in the morning. I do need to try and carve out some time at the end of the working day to make sure I'm obviously getting double the benefit. But often you'll find your mind will just, ideas will just come into your mind. It's like lots of people sort of say if they're in the bath or the shower, often that's when you get those ideas. It's just when you're away from the computer, away from, whatever it is, the distractions of the day. I think it is just gives you that time and that clearness and that clarity.
No, I totally agree. And so much internal chatter is tending to go on, particularly when you're in career transition. And there's some anxiety that comes with that for obvious reasons. So I think the mental side of job searching and just of wellness in general is quite rightly getting the recognition that it hasn't previously gotten right now. And so yeah, I'm fascinated. I am going to get it into a habit at some point. I think what it is as well is really anchoring the benefits, really anchoring down the benefits. So you you need to be intentional about recognizing the benefits of when you've done it and what happened. Does that make sense?
No, definitely.
And I think that's what I've missed, why it hasn't become a habit for me, is I haven't been intentional about linking it to how I felt. I know it does me good, but I haven't been super specific in my mind around what that's actually giving me and how I've showed up in my relationships or work or whatever it might be. So anyway, thank you I know I took us off a little bit there, but I was interested in that topic. So let's go back to your job search transitions. So we left the original brand that you were working for 15 years. You helped with the administrators. You got hit up on LinkedIn for an opportunity and joined another organization.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew here. Just wanted to very briefly interrupt this podcast episode to tell you a little bit more about our Career Jump Club. So our Career Jump Club was created to help job seekers understand what they want and how to get it, right? So becoming a club member is a great move if you're looking to get the clarity and confidence in order to secure your next role. With the membership, you get a number of different things. So first thing you get is access to our online platform, which has over 30 videos, 40, 50 different templates, workbooks, and it takes you through everything from sort of understanding what you want to how to position your CV and LinkedIn, how to interview, how to close offers and negotiate better salaries, a full end-to-end job search course effectively for senior leaders. So you get that, you get a fortnightly group coaching call, which is with me and with the other members, where we bounce around best practice, share slide decks, share techniques, and share the latest data on what's working for people. And you get to, most importantly, become part of our closed LinkedIn group and our closed community. And in there is where the magic often happens, because you get people referring each other into opportunity, supporting each other, and just sharing. And that's what it's all about. So if you're financially able and you'd like to invest in your job search, head on over to www.careerjump.com, all one word, /club, and you'll find the landing page and come and give it a go. We'll see you in there. Anyway, back to the pod.
Tell me about your story since then.
Yeah, well, since then I was really excited. It was another ladies wear brand that obviously really resonated with me, and it was great. I was able to take all my learnings from my previous role, obviously put those into action. I joined that brand in December 19. Obviously, as we know, unfortunately, March 2020, the world, as far as we were concerned in the UK, obviously changed overnight. So obviously consequently started working from home, and then I was put on furlough a couple of weeks later. Unfortunately, the brand was very occasion wear based, and obviously occasion wear demand fell off a cliff overnight. So then I was put at risk of redundancy, and for the second time in pretty much six months, unfortunately, I was made redundant. Again, I was lucky, obviously I had a notice period, so I had the whole of the summer, I think, just to reflect and obviously start the job search again. Ironically, I think I had 4 interviews, autumn, winter 19, summer 20. I had 4 interviews again. That seems to be, I don't know, my golden number. It was interesting. All of those 4 interviews actually came from different places, which is quite.
Tell us more. What was the origination of them?
So one interview was from an agency that I'd registered with.
Mm-hmm.
One interview was via a headhunter. One interview was through LinkedIn. So I think there's lots of talk about LinkedIn and just the number of candidates. But this role, I for one am quite fussy about the roles I apply for. I have heard people applying for hundreds. Unfortunately, maybe just my industry and just the sort of role I'm looking for, there aren't hundreds to apply for in the first place. And I just think for your mental health, if you're applying for lots of roles and maybe not receiving feedback, I don't know if that's a great thing. Mm-hmm. So I probably in the summer, I probably applied for maybe on LinkedIn, probably about 6 or 7 roles. Again, you don't always get feedback, which I don't think is great from a candidate's point of view, because all those brands, I'm never going to shop those brands again. We talk a lot about employee advocacy. I think HR managers, if any listen to this podcast, need to think about candidates advocacy. Because the brands that have treated me well, I will shop, but the others, I'd happily tell my friends and family. I applied for that role. I wrote a cover letter. I spent X number of hours doing it, and I never actually heard back, which I don't think is a positive thing for anybody.
Hugely, hugely important point. All the money that's going into customer experience, and yet people are losing and leaking customers through their candidate experience. There's no doubt about it. So thank you for taking that.
No, definitely. Yeah. My third opportunity, so it was via LinkedIn. I think the roles I've been successful for, lots of them I've sort of had goosebumps, if that makes sense. So yeah. I sort of saw this role and I was like, oh, that's me. So I, wrote a cover letter, applied for it. I actually had, probably including an initial phone call, 4 interviews for that role. I'm actually sort of still in contact with the individual who would have been my line manager, because we got on really, really well during the process. Unfortunately, that role I fell at the final hurdle. Looking back, I remember all through the process, I was like, oh, do I do a SWOT? Do I do a presentation or something? And I didn't. And I remember thinking that, and I had like Post-its, and I was, it was a retail brand, and I was like, but I didn't. And I think maybe that's one reason why I didn't succeed in that role. A good tip I did learn during that process was, especially it's easy if you're like me, you're going for a retail brand, but follow the brand, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on LinkedIn, however they communicate with their customers. Because this brand, I literally went onto Instagram. It was literally 5 minutes before the first phone call. They just opened a store. Mm. So brilliant. The initial conversation, I was like, oh, I see the store's just opened. How's it going? And immediately with the interviewer, you're one step above the competition, because they might not be aware of that fact. And then you've got a common thread to talk about. So I think that obviously really helped me with that process. And then my 4th opportunity was actually through my line manager, and it was her friends were setting up a brand. So again, so that was how I went into that contract. That was a contract role. And again, I had to do a presentation for that role. So that made me, after the experience, think, oh, I should have done a presentation for other roles. And I was successful in that role. So that was a contract opportunity. And interestingly, I've spoken to agents after that contract ended, and because it was a startup, it was sustainable. So something completely different to maybe the more corporate brands I've possibly worked for in the past. And interestingly, they said that added something different to my CV and maybe more marketable. Apart from the fact my 2 most recent roles have been different experiences to my 15-year tenure. And obviously I had different systems, I had different, much more contacts, than I had previously, and obviously different experiences that made me more marketable for the future, arguably.
Yeah, no, of course it does. Well, every experience should make people more marketable if it's viewed in the right way, because experience gives you that growth, doesn't it? So you finish this, loads of great tips in there, by the way. Thank you. You finish this contract role with the startup, which sounds fun. And then how are you feeling at this point, and what do you decide to do next, and what are your next moves in terms of attracting something longer term? Yeah,
well, obviously I was feeling a bit like, oh my gosh, this feels a little bit like deja vu, because just under I've been in the same job for 15 years, and in just over a year, I'm on the market for the 3rd time. So I did think, oh my gosh, okay, right. So I try to think about my experience in the summer, and obviously my experience the previous year, and that had all been positive. So from that, I knew I was in contact with some of the agents. I've probably got a little bank of probably about 5 agencies that, every time I'm on the market, I'll contact, but some of them I'll ring them up, or, I think you need to keep that dialogue. Okay, so obviously I contacted all of them, and I was a bit like, okay, it's just before Christmas. Oh, this is probably going to be, a little bit of a quiet time. And then I did apply for some jobs on LinkedIn. And one of them, had a video interview for the first stage and did a SWOT. And that company, obviously I can't name them, but they were absolutely fantastic. I had a 20-minute call with HR before the SWOT, telling me all about it. And then they gave you feedback afterwards.
Yeah, well, tremendous. So yeah. we'll still shop with them.
We will indeed. No, so that, and then I was scrolling through LinkedIn one day, and I saw this job, and it was head of business development. I thought, oh, okay, that's me. Had a little look and applied. I actually phoned the agent straight away, sent my CV, and she rang me back very soon after, and sort of said, oh yeah, I think you're just what they're looking for. So then I started this process. I had an initial phone call with HR. That went really well. Then I met HR. And what I really liked about the company was, we all hear about the cat and mouse tale. You go for an interview, you're put on tenterhooks. You don't know if you're going to maybe necessarily, reach the next stage. There's just that whole period of not knowing and waiting. And what really, really impressed me was at the end of the second meeting, arguably, yes, I'd like to progress you to the next stage. So I thought, brilliant. And because, this is the role I've got now at Crew Clothing Company, I'm head of business development. So I was like, right, brilliant. I'm not working. I can go and visit some stores now. So I think I was really impressed with that. Right. There's no uncertainty. And then I had my next interview, HR actually the HR director came out to see me, to ask me how it went when I was in reception. So I think that just shows what sort of company it is. Just how much they care about the candidates, and
well done to Crew for that, because these small touch points are totally missed by a lot of organisations. But candidates are making a judgment on your culture based on how you make them feel during the recruitment process, right? How long the paperwork takes, how well you feedback, how well you communicate, how long decisions take. All of these things are judgments you're making, right? And
no,
they did a good job. They did a good job. Well, you said yes. So why did you decide to join them in the end? What was it that attracted you?
I think it was the opportunity, because it's very surprising, because Crew Clothing Company is obviously huge in the UK. They've got over 90 stores. Yep. But there's, at the moment, this hopefully will change in the very near future, there's no physical store presence overseas. And so the potential is absolutely huge. I was really excited because they just launched kids wear. So obviously, babies wear, obviously all the gifting, there's lots of licensed product. I mean, very exciting from a sponsorship point of view. They sponsor lots of sporting events as well, which is sponsor tennis, sponsor rowing, they sponsor Formula One teams. They do lots of sponsorship as well. So I think there's lots of potential for the brand. I sort of see it as maybe a British version of Ralph Lauren. Hopefully we'll be able to conquer the world to that scale.
Well, that's a tremendous ambition. And yeah, really good that you've made an assessment based on the culture and also the size of the opportunity. What questions did you ask in the interview process in order to try and work out if it was the right place for you? As a candidate, what kind of questions did you ask?
Yeah, I think very much just in the initial interview, just in terms of culture and fit, just sort of, and I also just training, because I was going in reporting to the CEO, which is because I obviously I've got years and years of experience, but you like to know, is there still that training and mentoring? And it was very encouraging. HR sort of said they have a mentor, and all the the senior leaders go away once a year and things. And he says it was a very supportive culture. He sort of said everyone really worked together and supported each other, and it wasn't very hierarchical. So obviously I think it's really important to find out what the culture is of the company.
No,
and just
totally.
what I think, fit is everything. Obviously it's, because you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And I think often people forget that, especially in these times. I know it's very, very difficult because obviously there's not as many roles out there, but it's really, really important you choose the right role for both parties, because you both need it to work. And then obviously it's like, where do you see the role going? Where are the pain points of the organization? In a year's time, how will I know if I've been successful? I think it's really just really trying to find out exactly what they want from the hire.
No, of course it is. And thank you so much for re-emphasizing the fact it is a two-way process. I obviously harp on about this quite a lot, but it's so important that you are qualifying the opportunity and the environment for you, as well as being qualified yourself as a potential solution. So, and the culture bit was a really good insight there. So we know there's lots of people on the market at the moment. Some people are finding themselves in some quite difficult situations and some tough spots. As a job search veteran now, after your last 12 months, what other kind of tips or advice would you give to people that are currently going through their own transition journey? What would you say?
We talked about maybe job search buddies. Obviously, I joined the Career Jump scheme. I think it's find people that are in the same position. It's difficult now because we can't all meet up, or reach out to contacts. People will have like Zoom coffees with you. I think it's don't feel like you're alone. And especially, obviously, lots of big organizations have gone into administration lately. And there's lots of people maybe feel like that. There's, obviously, you're doing your weekly shows on LinkedIn. There's lots and lots of support out there. So I think if you feel you need support, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm happy to link in with anyone, who've used this podcast, who wants more advice. And it's also, I think we talked about LinkedIn, and obviously, I've got this role through LinkedIn, and actually, in theory, my previous two roles as well. Is it 2% of people post, Andrew, or 5% of people post on LinkedIn? It's a very
2%.
small, very small percentage. By posting, people do notice, because when I contacted some ex-colleagues in the summer, I actually didn't do the I'm out of work post. I actually just messaged them all privately and just sort of said about my situation, because they're all very senior, and again, I wasn't sure who'd maybe read the post. And some of them came back to me and said, "Oh, I love your comments on LinkedIn." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I must admit, I'm probably the worst one for doing this. I'll probably comment and post much more when I'm not in a post, because then, to be honest, you've got the time. But don't be afraid to post on LinkedIn, because people will see, and your name will be out there. And I mean, now the great thing about this time is probably one of the only positive things is there's a webinar virtually every hour. And I used to post to start with just about webinars. Listen to the webinar. You can even just post you're listening to it. What are your couple of takeaways? Put that out there, so you're not actually having to maybe generate your own individual content, but then people are going to see that. Or what podcasts do you like? I think then, people will get used to seeing your name. I think there's some people in retail doing some great things at the moment. People are doing like one girl's doing Let's Connect, where she's putting her friends and sort of offering, 30-minute slots with her friends that are obviously senior leaders in the industry. I think people are doing, some really great things, but don't feel you're on your own, because unfortunately at the moment you're not.
No, you're definitely not. We can both testify to that. Tremendous advice there on LinkedIn. You know my view on that topic, as does anybody else who listens to this podcast. I think it's an incredible channel and an incredible ecosystem. And as you say, you don't have to create. You can document what you're doing, but just keeping front of mind is super key. The bit about not feeling on your own alone is super important when we talk about that mental side as well. And I'd really like to think that, there'll be somebody that listens to the podcast today and resonates with your journey. Everyone's journey is different. But I hope somebody takes not only some good advice, but get some renewed hope from listening to your own journey, and the fact that you've landed in this awesome head of BD role with Crew as well, which sounds like an exciting one. So I just want to thank you for investing the time and paying it forward by sharing your insights and your open journey with us today. We wish you and Crew all the best for the international expansion. Very exciting times. Look forward to seeing that. I'll continue to buy their shirts, nice pink numbers, as I've said to you before. I like their pink shirts. To her address and her profile in the comments and everything else. Just massive gratitude. Thank you so much again for giving up your time, and keep safe and well. Keep at it.
Thank you, Andrew. Same to you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye bye.
You've been listening to the Career Jump podcast with Andrew McCaskill. For more resources and information, just head over to the Career Jump website at www.execcareerjump.com to supercharge your job search and start making moves. Let's get to work.